What's up, fellow lords of gaming, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to jump into this Marvel Future Fight update details for the What If Season 2 update. So let's start off the rip. I've already taken a look at some of the notes inside here and I'm little than impressed. Like, it seems like they're putting out something that's just like, it's meh. I don't think it's gonna wow anybody, and at the same time I don't think it's gonna disappoint anybody, but it's just like one of those updates where it's like, I think it's gonna be hit or miss depending on the crowd. But in terms of the character improvements and things like that there's just not a whole lot of meat on those bones to inspire you to basically get these. So let's jump right on in and let's talk about this. So basically, we introduced the December update, Marvel's What If Season 2. So you know we're getting 3 hero uniforms for Hela, Wenwu, and then for Nebula. I think the Nebula uniform is going to be a must buy for the character, period, just because any upgrade that she's get is going to be an upgrade for her overall, especially since she's haven't had one in so long. We got Wenwu with the tier 3, which is just I don't know, like happy sad, because realistically they should not be releasing characters who are just tier 2 anymore, where we've got tier 3 Transcendence and tier 4 now in the game. A character basically coming to the game and not having that available to them is just like releasing a character at level that can only go to level 60. It makes no sense. And then we've got the long awaited Hela tier 4. I'm not as impressed with the Hela tier 4 as I thought I would be when they finally came with it. I thought it was going to come strong. Nevertheless, I also feel like they're missing out on the opportunity to specifically dive into that collection system and give us the Asgardian collection system. They could have did this and they didn't. I don't know why. Like, if you look at it, we just got Loki, we have Hela now, we had Angela and Odin not too long ago. Thor hasn't had a uniform in a while, and then you can look at the Warriors 3 and the litany of Asgardian type characters we have. By introducing Hela right now, it'd have been perfect for that the uniform collection, or the the team up collection, to basically have that Asgardian feature inside there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically another way that they spanned out for the ability. So we got Midnight Sun, Sinister Six, and X-Force. This would have been perfect for them to just introduce the Asgardian team up collection inside there. At least that's my opinion anyways, right? So let's take a look at what we got here, starting off with Kaori, because there's not a whole lot here for Kaori in the first place. I'll pull this out so that way you can just look at some of the screenshots and stuff inside here. I'll show you some of the gameplay. So Kaori is going to be a blast superhero, human female character, and we'll take a look at that in a second, but she's only going to be transcendent. So the good thing about it is that they're introducing a new not a new game mode. It's a game mode we've seen in Marvel Contest of Champions, and we've seen this previously for you to acquire some of the biometrics, but she's going to be available in a special daily growth support, biometrics store inside the hero chest for the premium hero chest, and then this new event battle for her biometric stages. Start off the bat with a really poor thing. Like, I mean, at this point, this should just be omitted. Like, we should be going back to characters at this point and looking at this leadership, because having a 45% increase of energy defense and the life of this game, energy defense and physical defense has not mattered. So I don't know why you're putting that on leaderships now. And then we get her Heroes Decree tier 2 passive, which is probably the spiciest of the character kit, and she basically deals damage dealt to targets with the removes all debuffs effect by 50%. So like, it applies to all your superhero allies, so you could potentially see her maybe dumping into like Otherworld battle or Alliance battle, and then providing a buff to your superheroes, so that way it can remove the buff, all debuffs effects from like your villain characters, and just like, I don't know, like we're gonna have to see how it plays out. And then you got the increased damage dealt to targets with the debuff removal, which is an instinct effect. I don't know that I've seen this, so I'm not sure exactly what it means, but we get what the idea here. Like, so if your target has like a debuff removal effect, then basically it's going to take that off by 50%. The rest of her kit, like the passive, she gets a nice dodge rate increase by 30%, a 55% increase in energy attack that applies to herself, and then she gets super armor increase or basic defense. So she should be, you know, relatively good from here in terms of the attack boost and the defensive boost that she has here, at least at, you know, Transcendence, which is just sad because like a Transcendent character at this point, there's enough T4s on the market that you're probably playing with T4s, and if the character is not within that range, then how useful are they going to be into PvP? And when we look at the rest of her kit, there's not a whole lot here to say that she's going to be good for PvP. We get stun, we get silence on her first skill, we get stun and silence on her second skill, with a barrier effect, like barrier. I don't know, like, so then we get the silence, incapacitation, and paralysis, which thankfully ignores immunity for your bosses, and we get a nice 50% reduction defense over here. She gets a nice recovery of 30% HP, which is great on that, and then she gets a really nice frenzy buff of 61 and 30. You really can't complain about that at all, I guess. And then we get stun and silence again with incapacitation and paralysis as well, which goes back to ignoring immunity. And then she also removes the active buff from target. So like, I wonder, like, for instance, if we got a Kahori on Kahori action inside the game, because she has the removes active buff, does that count as a debuff removal? Or, you know, like, so like, how's that gonna work? You get what I'm saying? So we'll have to see how it works overall. And then we get the 100% chance to grant all damage immunity, and we get the 60, 30 and 1 buffs here. So she's got 2 frenzy buffs on 2 skills. Like, that's crazy, right? So like 6 seconds and then 6 seconds as well on here. So you basically always have an uptime on that all basic of attack, almost by, especially at 13 and 14 seconds. That's basically 6 and 7 seconds. You're going to always have this buff up for 60, for like it depends. Like, you're going to always basically be able to tap into that though. And then we get the stun, incapacitation, and we get more panic, which increases the basic damage as well. And then we get the invincible here, and then increase basic damage by 100% for 1 attack. So she should have a really nice you know, damage output. It's just weird because this is really like a PvP effect, so I'm wondering, like, nothing else here really lends itself to PvP, so I'm wondering how that's gonna exactly work inside there. But, you know, Kaori is coming to Marvel Future Fight, and let me know if you ecstatic about her. Her skills, some of them did look good in the live stream last night, but we'll see how it pans out overall. So she's the only new character that we're getting. I think the most exciting one that people are going to point to is obviously going to be our girl Hela. Now Hela's got a completely new look, a completely new vibe. She's Sans and Emerald, you know, queen kind of look, and she's now got a red, you know, Chinese look that's going on to her uniform and suit. You know, like, I like the look and stuff like that. I like that she still maintains the swords. I'm just wondering, like, how great it's going to be. So let's bounce some of the skills basically off of her from what she previously had. So this was her uniform, the most recent uniform that you basically had for the character. Before that, you had, you know, the Ragnarok and the modern. So let's take a look at these real quick. All right, so inside the uniform effect, this was previously what she had. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a little bit disappointing because it's weird, right? Like, I think you'd be best to hold out on purchasing this specific uniform, and, you know, going into whether or not you're gonna T4 her, because of how little they've done with the optimization of the character. Like, that's just the bottom line, right? So like, if you look at her uniform, it applies to all allies. She gets the she still keeps the 50, and then she gets it keeps the 30 for the superhero faction, right? But now she gains an ignore target's dodge rate by 20%. So that's what she gains there in terms of the uniform, 20% overall. All right, so now we'll go back and take a look at her skills overall and see the difference in comparison. So let's start off with her passive skills. So Lady of Despair, this is what it was before, where it was 30, 40, and 25. So all she's really gaining on this is going to be a 5% change in the decreased basic damage received, 5%. So we get 2 new effects in terms of the ignore target's dodge rate at 20% on a uniform, which basically helps out with, like, you know, some world boss content for, like, you know, characters that you need that, bosses that you need that for. But then she only gets a 5% on the passive here. Now, when we take a look at her second passive, Dark Protection, which is now going to be called Death's Embrace, So the other one's going to change to Throne of Niflheim, I think it is, whatever. So now it's going to be Dark's Protection, right? And so underneath this skill, you can see here is 50, 20, 50, and affects all retacks. So there's no change in this at all whatsoever. Yeah, all right, you know, it is what it is, right? So now we look at Blade of Hell. Blade of Hell basically stays the same. Like, I mean, realistically, okay, let me not bullshit that one. We get the silence and we get the fracture. We lose out on the bleed, which is weird that we lose out on bleed just because she's still dealing with the swords and stuff like that, the blades, but it's weird, right? So we do get an increase to the energy damage here, so it goes up to 70%. And we get an increase to the additional damage. It's important to start paying attention to these because you're starting to see some of the balance effects that they're doing to the characters in the game that don't really quite make a whole lot of sense, because you're like starting to pay attention to those numbers and how they're just playing around with the optimization numbers, taking some from here to give to there, and it just kind of feels like it hurts the game in a little bit because they're spread loading things from the way they did before, and you can't really blame them because a lot of games do this where they give it to you in bits and pieces here and there for how you do it, whether it's through gear, whether it's through artifacts, whether it's through this stuff. Other games do this by and large, and they've largely profited off of it. So but the problem is that their player base at Marvel Future Fight is so accustomed to this, and now you're ostracizing the player base that was accustomed to not having to deal with these type of mechanics in the game. So anyways, let's move on. So we got Death's Touch, that's over here, complete change on the skill here. We get Destruction Circle, which just has burn and just has fracture, so you lose out on the decrease all basic attacks, the all basic defense, the all resistance. That's gone, right? And the energy damage is reduced from 112 to 95, and the additional damage is reduced to 537 as well. So that's what you're getting there, right? So the Merciless Judgment is going to become predicted in. So we do get the counterattacks when defending against an enemy for this attack, and unfortunately R3P, whatever, I can't remember what his name was, 3RL, excuse me, he didn't show the counterattack on a stream last night. I don't know if he just didn't know how to activate the enemy's attack option so that way he could show it, but he didn't. So we keep the bleed, we gain paralysis instead of stun, and then you get the 100% chance that stays, and then you get the increase all basic attacks, which is staying at 15 and 1. Like, that's surprising, right? It's like not changed at all. And then it accumulates the pure damage up to 15% of max HP, basically still stays there. So it's like a little weird because, like, you see what I'm saying here by this uniform. I just wanted to point it out with her because I'm going to breeze through the other ones. Like, when I talk about optimization uniforms now and like nickeling and diming the player base for simple optimizations, that like, does Call of Duty basically come and ask me for, you know, $1,000 or $10 to optimize a gun and basically say, like, you know, the nerf and the buff, the debuffs and the nerfs? Do they ask me to pay for that? Like, no. Like, you know, like that just comes in a patch. Like, basically, it's the reason why I will keep lobbying for this. We need to move towards a transmog system with uniforms, so that way they can just introduce uniforms that maybe don't necessarily change the VFX of the skills all the time, and that way you can just introduce a uniform that's just simply a uniform and that has a different design change, and then players can basically purchase those for like $5 or something like that. And then these mega uniforms that, you know, that are going to come out or whatever, those can cost, you know, the $10-15 or whatever that you want players to invest in, and they have like the major impact changes to the character. But like these things, these basically become optimization things, and then that's all there is. So we get Dark Flame at number 4, and basically we gain burn, we lose the stun, we get the silence, we keep the decrease for 50%, and then we get a barrier skill in here for 10, and we increase the skill damage stays by 25 and 20. So nothing new here. The only difference as well, pay attention to this because this is really sad, on the 4th skill where she previously had the recovery for 15% HP, it ain't there. It's not there. It's no longer there. The recovery is removed from the 4th skill, and then we're going to see it basically doubled up on the 5th skill. So here, where we had the recovery of 15% HP on the Maidens of Chain, they basically gave you now recovers 30% HP on just the 5th skill, right? So instead of pinging between the 2 skills, now they've basically buffed it so that way she gains the full heal effect on just 1 skill at a time. So you don't have to 4 and 5, you can just 5 for the heal. So on the fifth skill, she gets burn, she gets bleed. We keep the incapacitation and we gain paralysis, which ignores immunity. She keeps the invincible. This is now for 7 seconds instead of the 4 seconds. And then we get a nice frenzy buff of 25, 1, and 25. So you have to ask yourself for real, like, there's the move of the HP buff is what you get at 30% because it was already there. She already had the 30%. It's just the way you moved it on the uniform. And then the, by the way, I forgot to mention the energy damage is boosted on this skill. So she goes up to 160 and up to 162 on the energy damage. You have to determine, right? Like, how impactful is this going to be? Like, obviously the movement and the way the character plays is probably going to be a little bit different in terms of number of hits and things like that. So paper to play always looks different inside Marvel Future Fight because you're basically optimizing against that. So it's like one of those things there, right? Because you have to admit, for Marvel Future Fight, it's not like you're playing 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross or you're playing, you know, Black Clover, and essentially we still have the same skill animations. They are updating the skill animations with these uniforms. I just think that is better if they maybe take a time to look at that and go, do we want to update skill animations, or do we want to just give character new looks and maybe give some free-to-play incentive ways to obtain those uniforms and give some type of way so that way players could pay for those uniforms outright, and you're just paying for a cosmetic change of transmog, and then introduce these major buffs that you basically change the character in VFX, so that way you have more time to basically get after those. That's my thought on it. You know, disagree or agree, leave the comment section below, let me know. All right, so that's what she gets. So now Hela's also getting her T4. She's got a very interesting T4, I would say. I think it's interesting. I'm gonna pull this up here. So basically, she gets to decrease all basic attacks by 30 and all basic defenses by 40 and all speeds by 10. So that's nice because the effect is, it's a T4 that's doing more than just, like, I think if they had just released this T4 and it had been increase all basic attacks by 70%, energy damage by 600 and 153 when the striker skill is used, I would have looked at this and like, yo, this is just more bullshit, right? But at least now we're seeing a T4 that's affecting and impacting your enemy types as well, or, you know, has a actually second order of effect on it that makes it seem like it's something that you couldn't just have dumped inside the skill tree. Like, this is at least interesting, you know what I mean? So yeah, so that's Hela, right? So Hela in a nutshell is there's very little to talk about when Wenwu and even to some extent Nebula, other than the fact that I think the uniform looks really cool. So Wenwu is basically has not had a uniform before, so this is his first uniform that he's gotten. So it's going to be a boost no matter what to the character. That's just the truth of the matter. We know that to be true, right? So let's take a look at his skills. So first up, Wenwu's getting a T3, so that's awesome, right? Awesome that he's finally getting a T3, although I'd argue that it's been way too long and it's been, you know, silly that we have not addressed that we got tier 2 characters being introduced into the game without potential transcendence or whatever, and we even have characters being transcended with just uniforms. So anyways, so let's take a look at his skills. So Will of the 10 Rings, right? So super armor is going to be super armor increases all basic defense, was 5%, is now going to be increased to 30% inside of here. So that's nice, all the way up to 30%. Increase the skill damage by 30, and 25 is going to be increased to 45 and 25. So a little bit of a bonus there for his passive, Will of the 10 Rings. Secondary passive, which was for supervillain allies, he was getting the 25% increase of HP, now 30% increase of HP. So just a little bit different inside here. So his passive, like, you know, it's an interesting passive to be able to use for some characters. Like, mainly it would have probably been great for like Hulk and stuff like that, especially when we were using Hulk to just like railroad the freaking World Boss Legend system, which I feel like they should have still just left the hell the way it was. Yeah, this is my opinion anyways, right? So let's take a look at the other skills that he got. Sinister Strike, right? Not a whole lot of changes here. He just keeps the stun on this one. So not a whole lot of change. There is a reduction in the energy damage from 100 to 80, but there is an increase from the additional energy damage from 142 to 1067. 10 Ring Whip is now his new Dark Violence skill, and I was surprised that this was just like blank page data. Like, I mean, it does increase the energy damage to 120 and the additional to 1067, but there's nothing else on his skill. Like, his kit on paper really looks like a character from about 3 years ago. So his 10 rings power is now called 10 ring whirlpool. And the interesting thing is that they removed the mechanic of the tap and hold, which I don't think was a bad thing, to be perfectly honest, because like when you looked at it, I never felt like it worked out the way like, you know, you thought it was going to work out. So this has become like that optimization thing, right? Where it's like hold it and then continue tapping it and you can get like it just, I don't know. It didn't work for me. I don't think it worked for a lot of players. It just felt weird. So like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it was what it was. That's basically what I'm saying. Like overall, it was what it was, right? He didn't come into the game with much flair. I doubt that he's going to add much flair now to the game. And like it even worse, he's going to add somewhat of little, because it's not like the Blast Supervillain male category is like, you know, wide open and there's like a lot of players there. But yeah, it is what it is. So on that 10 ring whirlpool, which was 10 rings of power, he keeps the recovery effect here. He gets a 25% HP increase, and then he gains incapacitation and the decrease all basic defenses by up to 50. So that's nice there. Warlord's Threat is now going to be called, it's still Warlord's Threat actually, excuse me, yeah, because when he showed us, it was the exact same skill, my fault. So we do get an increase to the Frenzy buff. It becomes 61 and then 35, so nice 15% increase there. The decrease stays there as well, but that's it. Like nothing's there. Like you get what I'm saying by optimizations. Then we go to Absolute Control, which is now Wrath of the Tiger. Keep the stun for 3 seconds now. Silence, incapacitation stays around for 3 seconds, and then we keep the penetration on the skills, and we keep the invincible as well. So not a whole lot to write home about there for Wenwu. Now Wenwu is getting his tier 3, so I think that's going to be the best part about the character, is that this is something he probably should have just had from the beginning. So he gets the stun, incapacitation, the paralysis, the decrease, the ignore targets dodge rate, the invincible. I mean, like pretty much at this point, like the tier 3 is starting to look like the potential transcendence. They all look the same to me in terms of like what the write-up is. So you can see what his transcendence, his tier 3 basically looks like here. It's not like a bad VFX tier 3. Like I'm not saying I hate the tier 3 or anything. It's decent. Like, you know, you can't complain about it in my opinion. Like it's a tier 3 for a character that's probably never going to get anything again. Like that's the truth of the matter, right? So like I hate to say that, but it is the truth. So then after you know, Wenwu, we basically get Nebula, and to be honest with you, it's been a little while since we've had Nebula in the game get any kind of update. So I think that she's sat in a pretty good position, because as a combat class female character, and let me show you this anyways. So if we go combat superhero. God damn, I hate when they do this. If we look at the combat class superhero, so combat superhero, you know, in terms of female characters, we've pretty much been saddled with, you know, Sif, Valkyrie, and then She-Hulk basically in the tree. Crescent unfortunately has not, you know, done very much for the game in terms of that, and by and large a lot of the other female characters haven't. So at the very least we get a new entry into the top ranks there for combat female superheroes, so that should be good overall. The problem is that I don't feel like there's probably enough there done for the character, but it's enough that it's a big enough boost and upgrade for the character overall. That's my thought on it, right? So like it's up to you how you look at it. But let's, instead of going down her skills, because like I said, her skills, it's not very much to write home about over there anyways. So she gets the increased guaranteed critical rate and the increases fire damage by 25. And the uniform look absolutely sick. So I think it's a must buy regardless, because I love the, you know, Nebula as Jandu look, and it being a Nova member, right? So she gets the 35% guaranteed dodge rate on top of that, the fire damage by 20%, and then the skill damage by 32 and 15. She gets the passive over here, which is not really good at all in my opinion. Like activation rate 5% chance when attacking. Like, did they really put that in there? Like activation rate 5% chance when attacking, deals additional 30% fire damage every 1 second. Like, I don't care if this is every hit is accounting against this passive. 5% chance when attacking. Like, who the hell wrote this in here? Like, who did that? 5% chance when attacking. I'm hoping to God that this was like a typo and it was supposed to be 50% chance when attacking. We'll have to see when the update launches. Anyway, so on her first skill, somersault arrow, she gets the stun, and then that's it. Like, it's just fire damage. We get the swinging arrow, paralysis, which ignores immunity. That's it. Yaka Twister is basically silence for 3 seconds, and then she gets 30% recovery, 30% of HP. And then Blazing Arrow, we get a frenzy buff, which is nice. They've upgraded the frenzy buff to 65, 1, and 25. You basically seeing trend there, right, with that. And then we get the 100% chance to grant all damage immunity. And then Living Arrow, she basically gets the 50% ignores immunity and invincible for 5 seconds, increase all basic attacks by 65 for 7 seconds. It's just like what the fuck is happening? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know, man. To be honest with you, I don't know. Like, I think the uniform looks great, and like I said, it's gonna be a massive improvement from what she currently has. That's the truth. Like, no matter how you looked at it, it's gonna be a massive improvement for this character overall. Like, it was so bad that it can only be but so good, and that's the bad part about it. But it's like, whatever. So Kaori, along with the remainder of what is surprisingly to be Lincoln Campbell and Katie, are receiving awakened skills. And so, like, Katie, for instance, is in that same ballpark as Wenwu, which was just crazy. Like, why are we releasing tier 2 characters when we got tier 3 and tier 4s? Even crazier though is that we're throwing Lincoln Campbell into the mix. Like, this dude is just like thrown in there. Like, I don't think I've seen him in the trailer. I know I haven't heard about him in comic books. So outside of the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, I thought we were never gonna get anything for this character. Like, I thought it was gonna be like Warwolf and like Deadlock, for instance, even though Deadlock's actually in the comics. Like, my thought process was we were gonna never see these characters get anything. Like, Katie is Katie, so it's like, whatever, who cares? And then we'll have to see what Kaori does, but like, I'm gonna imagine for the life of me, like, this is not gonna be a character that's gonna move and sell. I just don't think it's gonna move and sell, so we'll have to see what happens with that. But they all pretty much have the same little effects and buffs there, and then you can see what the skill looks like. So we'll just look at the one for Kaori, because yeah, it's Kaori's update, What If Season 2. So there's a lot going on the screen, and it was even confusing to me because when you look at the actual animation, you know, I can't even find Lincoln Campbell in it. I know he's supposed to be over here to the right, but other than him showing up right here, like, what is he doing? Oh, okay, he's just standing there. He's just standing there. Okay, dumpster fire. Anyways, outside of that, what do we get inside here? We got some new premium comic cards. Luckily enough, this premium comic card is not going to, you know, burst anybody's bubble to be like high demand. Like, if I get it, I get it, and it's just whatever. But we got the new comic card collection that's in there that can give you a 4% boost to your max HP. We get energy attack and physical attack, and then all basic defense increases. Like, it ain't moving and shaking anyway. You know what I mean? Like, cool. It's a good card. So basically having it, I like that, you know, Robbie Reyes is sitting on there. But yeah, that's it really. Some of the other cards, like the Magic card, actually looks pretty cool. Like, this would have been cool if they had made this a premium card and then given it like max HP on there, or, you know, something like giving me energy attack, max HP, and ignore defense. I actually like the Magic card a lot. The Spider-Man, you know, card that they had, the 2 Spider-Man cards, the What If Punisher cards. I used to love the What If series, like, because it just used to be like such a mashup of stuff that they could have did a whole lot with these. Like, what if Thor was born, the Force was raised by frost giants? Like the cards themselves, in terms of their physical effects and things like that, not a whole lot to write home about. Now, jumping into the artifacts, like, you know, yeah, we knew we were gonna get these, right? 20% chance to dodge all attacks. Like, that's really cool for Kaori. I don't know why it's called Mohawk's Hope. Like, what is this whole thing on Mohawk? Like, I guess they didn't want to signal out any one individual tribe or something like that. And then we get Wenwu. He gets to increase basic damage to superhero and supervillains. And then we get Katie, basically increased basic damage dealt to supervillain faction. And then we get Lincoln Campbell, who actually has like the Thor-esque you know, artifact. Increases lightning damage by 30% of lightning resist, and increases basic damage to supervillain faction by 15. So nice artifacts overall. We get the new season pass coming with some very I don't know how to say it really. Like, I guess the depending on how you feel about like the icons and stuff like that, I think the Nebula one looks really cool. The rest of them, I'm like, I'm good on, you know, realistically, I'm good on. But the Nebula one does look really cool. The uniform collections there, we're not getting any different changes in terms of this because I imagine we still haven't gotten our winter seasonal uniforms. So this is another reason why, like, if you're a free-to-play player, it might not be behoove you to purchase all these uniforms. So like, I would wait on Hella for sure, because her update on paper just seems very. And then looking at, like, you know, Nebula, I think that it's a good uniform upgrade, but you have to see. And the uniform here, like, I would, if you're really worried about the money, the money, I would probably wait for the seasonal uniforms to see what's put out here. So we got some other improvements into the game as well. Basically deal with the equipping of tier 4 striker skills, so that way, basically, like you can see here, if the striker is set on a different tier 4 hero, the striker list will display in the in-use text. When select striker for T4 hero will be deactivating, we set striker for the current T4 hero. So like, it's like auto populating basically for you. You have to take a look and check that out, right? So then we get a way to basically do a conversion of fragments. Now, I've told you guys on multiple videos, if you're not playing inside of the story mode missions inside of here and collecting fragments, then you're missing out on reward opportunities at the very least. So you can see here, for instance, this is like the weirdest place, right? Like, I would have preferred that they simplified the system and just made it so that way you collect fragments, and then basically for this mission, 9 fragments basically equates to just you getting a reward, basically. But instead, you can see here, like, I often end up where I have more fragments for mission 1 or more fragments for mission 5. Like, you can see 755, as opposed to like being on stage 9 where I get 140. And that's usually the benchmark for where I can put together rewards in terms of trying out for them. Now, what you can do with these is you have 2 options, right? So they're gonna have a normal conversion where you basically combine 2 story fragments, and then it gives you a random story fragment. I don't necessarily like this because the random story fragment could almost be one of the other fragments that you just have a whole shit ton of. And then you get the guaranteed conversion where you can convert 8 of the story fragments, and then those 8 will go to a guaranteed fragment. But I'm wasting fragments. They really should just simplify this and make it so that way any 9 fragments that I have, it basically equates to a chest award, and call it a day. Like, there's no reason not to just have this fragmented system where each little chapter quest basically represents its own fragment. I get it, right? Like, it's almost like, you know, you want me to go and collect for the picture and stuff like that, but, you know, it really doesn't work, at least in my opinion, right? I don't like it anyways. So like, you know, because I'm always going to end up with, so for instance, in here, I'm going to obviously want guaranteed fragments against, you know, stage 9. So like, most of the time I'm just like, well, I need to go 8 of these to get 1 of these. I need 8 of these to get 1 of these. And I need, you know, so that way it equates and equivalence. Just make it so that way if I get 9 fragments and I have 9 fragments put together of any order, then I just basically put together and get a chance at a chest, and it doesn't make a difference, right? I have 9 fragments, but I still played your damn missions basically and took the time to spend the energy. Up next too is inside Alliance Battle, the team selection. They've improved the criteria, the filter types and stuff like that inside there, so that's really good. They say that they improved the team up collection, certain parts of it. So like when you possess more tokens than the cost required for the collection upgrade, then you get a badge, and a shop has been added at the team up screen to check the recommended products for each theme or whatever, stuff like that, right? So whatever. Now the rest of the stuff I wasn't really that concerned about, like the Alliance Battle. They made some improvements to Surtur. We got special boost hero warning pop-up has been improved, and then they had some fixes, specifically I think the one for Captain Marvel where her artifact basically wasn't passing off. So those are all the updates coming inside of this update. I thought that we were gonna get probably like a little bit more content update maybe coming with the release of that developer's note. But really, like, to be honest with you, I think by and large you're gonna see that a lot of people are gonna feel like this update is mid as fuck to probably like not good, because that's what it feels like. It just doesn't feel like there's enough meat on the bone to chew at, and it doesn't really inspire you to basically like, hey, you know what, if I looked at Hela and I go inside this character and I'm like, hey, I need a universal supervillain who's a female, she's like my option here, but do I want to use her over Jean Grey? Like, do I, like, I don't know, like, it's not like she has there's not a lot of competition at the universal female. Like, you can see here, we basically got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 female characters out of the universal supervillains. Like, that's it. So like, I don't see us coming back to Proxima Midnight and her getting an upgrade at any point. Maybe in some infinite way, maybe we get Morgan Le Fay T4. I don't see it. Doubtful at all that we will ever see anything victorious remotely. So like, it becomes one of those things of like, you know, she is what she is, and they don't have to give you much because there's not much competition inside that window. So it is what it is, I guess, guys. You know, let me know in the comment section what you plan on doing, how you plan on you know, what you feel about this update, and we got about 5 hours before it kicks off. Until next time, guys, peace.